portion. And so they think, okay, there's all of us over here who confess Jesus as Lord, and that's the small group that's gone through the narrow gate and has rejected the broad way and is in the narrow path. That's us. And then everybody on the broad path, well, those are all the, the atheists, the agnostics, the other religions, the cults, Hollywood, so on and so forth, who will not confess Jesus as Lord. That's the way many people understand this passage, and that is not at all what Jesus is saying. Jesus is not even talking about this other world out here. He's not saying anything about the atheist or Hollywood or those of other religions or those of other cults. What he is saying is, among those who claim to be my disciples, few will find it. Are you hearing me? This is the dreadful, terrible part of what he's saying. He's not saying there's a little group of people on planet Earth who confess my name, and they are the ones who pass through the narrow gate, and they're in the narrow way, and they're going to be saved, and everyone else out there who doesn't confess my name is going to be lost. That's not what he's saying. He's looking at his disciples, and he's saying, among those of you who confess me as Lord, only few of you will find the way to eternal life. You say, Brother Paul, prove it. Okay? I will. Look over in verse 21. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but he who does the will of my Father who is in heaven will enter. Many will say to me on that day, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name, and in your name cast out demons, and in your name perform many miracles? And I will declare to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you who practice lawlessness. Listen, dear friend, listen to me. My ministry has greatly changed here in the last year, and I just don't know what I'm going to do. I think I'm going to go to another country, or I'm going to get a tent and preach out in the streets or something. Because used to, I would preach to large congregations of people who love the world. And now it seems like I'm in conferences where everybody comes and I'm preaching to the choir. And I wasn't made for preaching to the choir. But let me tell you something. Even among you, and even this is a word from my own heart, don't think that there are not times I do not sit up in the wee hours of the morning wondering, Lord, am I also one of yours? And that is a healthy thing to think about every once in a while. But I want to warn you about something. Jesus is teaching that among those people who emphatically declare Him to be Lord, many of them would be lost to destruction. Also know this. Those who are truly deceived are always confident that they are not. And they are so confident they never study the matter to determine whether or not they truly are or not. Many of you who will possibly be lost will walk out of here today and actually think, man, that sure does apply. That is truth that the evangelical church needs to hear. No, I want you to know something. I say this with the sincerity of my heart, and it's what I practice. It is the truth Paul Washer needs to hear. It is a truth the missionary in Indonesia needs to hear. All of us, at times in our life, need to return to that admonition of the Apostle Paul to do what? To examine ourselves, to test ourselves, to see if we are in the faith. The admonition of the Apostle Peter to make our calling and our election sure. Now, a Christian can have great confidence in his salvation, and over the years that confidence can grow, but we should always be open to asking the question, is it I? Is it I? And we're going to conclude with just this part and then pick up later on another part of this text. But remember this. The gate is small. The way is narrow that leads to life. Now, I want to make one important statement about this. This passage right here requires about 7 lectures, but I'm trying to reduce it all down to one. It leads to life. But it also begins with life. As the book says in Romans chapter 1, from faith to faith, the Christian life is also from life to life. It's not that there's this morbid idea of the Christian life in which one day I'll make it to heaven, and when I make it to heaven I will find true spiritual life and the true presence of God, and I'll be able to enjoy Him forever. That is a hope, but that's not the entirety of the Christian life. That is why we are told in John 3:16, "For God so loved the world, He gave His only begotten Son, that whosoever believed in Him shall not perish but have everlasting life." And when does it begin? At the moment of the new birth, at the moment of justification. You are given life. And so the Christian life is going from life to life. It is receiving the life of God, birthed out of the seed of God, according to 1 Peter. I work with a lot of guys in the inner city, Chicago and Memphis, and guys who do rap and other things like that. And sometimes I've really come under a lot of people who've really said, "Why do you do that?" I mean, I really don't look like a rap guy. And I'll tell you why. Because I see among those young men and women life. There's life. God's done something in their life. They're studying His Word. They're studying good books. They're witnessing. They're loving. They're changing. They're being transformed. Life. I really don't care a whole lot about the package it comes in. I want to see life. I see so many religious people that have no life of God in them. I mean, isn't it amazing? And so many of you can testify to this. I sit down on a plane. I've done this so many times. I remember when I was first saved, about a year after being saved. There was going to be a big crusade in Austin, Texas. And while I was, part of it, putting up chairs and everything, I was so excited, a new believer. I was getting to help out. And I went around the back of the stage, this curtain. I bumped into this guy. He's from Africa. And I said, "Oh, excuse me." He said, "Excuse me." He talked the Queen's English. I'm hillbilly, but we were able to communicate. And, "What's your name?" He told me. I told him his. It was just like in 1 second. It was like I loved him as much as anybody had ever loved him alive. He was a believer. You just saw life all over him. I used to know this missionary. I don't know if he had the gift of discernment or what. We'd be driving down the road in Peru. He goes, "There goes a live one." And I go, "What? That one? Look at him. You can tell. He's alive." I have sat down with important religious men. And I mean, it's frightening. Some of them very, very godly. But I have sat down with some of them. And literally, if I talked about some strategy for making their church grow, they were just... But if I started with the book of Colossians and started talking about, "Man, God showed me this in the book of Colossians about the glory of Christ," they're just looking over my shoulder to figure out who else is coming more important they could talk to. They didn't care. Is there life in you? Is Christianity... Is walking in the narrow way this type of drudgery that you do because it's the right thing to do? Or because you know it's a standard your parents have put? Or you think it's something that's virtuous, but you actually